Okay, perfect. So good morning, Dr. Lai. Today is July 17th, 2021, and I, Sam Lee, will be interviewing you on behalf of HA. Could you please introduce yourself briefly before we begin?
Yes, my name is Dr. Eugene Lai. My Chinese name is Chi Ho Lai. Um, I'm presently a physician at the Houston Methodist Neurological Institute.
Okay. To begin with, we'll talk a little bit about your early life. Do you mind sharing where and when you were born?
Sure, I was born in China. Um, I have one older brother and one younger brother. Um, then, when I was about 6 or 7 years old, in the early 50s, my family immigrated to Hong Kong, which at that time was a British colony. So I pretty much grew up in Hong Kong. Um, when we got there, at that time, in the early 50s, China is already under the communist rule. So we were fortunate to be able to have an exit visa to go to Hong Kong and join my grandmother there. So we started school after we get there. So my brothers and I. Um, so my elementary school is in a school that is a government school that beginning to learn English, because up until 6 or 7 years old, when I was in China, we do not study English. But later on, then when I'm in the fifth grade, uh, I was fortunate to be able to attend the Wai-Yan College in Hong Kong. This is a Jesuit-run school, uh, both elementary school and high school. So we really had a very good time over there. I attended the school from grade 5 all the way to graduate high school. Uh, I was pretty active in high school. Uh, so I was in the school team in badminton and volleyball. I was in the school's debate team. Um, I was fortunate enough to be selected the head prefect for the school in my senior year. One of the accomplishments that I have is that uh, I and my fellow classmates organized the first student council for the school, and the administration will allow high school students to voice some of opinions of studying and social activities and organized social activities and competitions and so on. So it was a fun time. Um, so after uh, high school, in the senior year, we have to take a uh, general certificate examination. And after that, we start to think about, college. Uh, Luckily, my parents were very supportive to send me uh, overseas to study. At that time, my older brother was already studying in the University of Wisconsin, in Madison, Wisconsin. Uh, so naturally, I also wanted to leave Hong Kong, which is a very small place with a lot of people. So kind of try to get out to other parts of the world and experience other opportunities. So I applied to the University of Wisconsin and got accepted. So in 1967, I then went overseas and attended the University of Wisconsin. So that's my undergraduate years. And, it's kind of a culture shock, but I worked pretty hard. Luckily, we get a scholarship, pretty much right away. And then I, of course, worked part-time also. So I was able to support myself through my undergraduate years. I studied biochemistry, which at that time it's kind of a hot area. A lot of interesting biological phenomena are now associated with biochemistry. So it is a very attractive area. At that time, we really study the enzymatic reactions in biological systems and so on. It is not an easy topic, I have to admit, but luckily my education in Hong Kong seems to, be quite well prepared for an education, in the U.S. system. So even though I had to work extra hard, but I didn't find specific any difficulties in able to catch up, with our fellow students that are gone through high school in the United States. So yes, go ahead. Go ahead and interrupt me when we talk. So I'm just going through chronologically, my education and my career and so on. So go ahead.
Oh yeah, I can step in, just ask like little questions here and there. That way you don't have to like keep talking for like the whole hour.
Yeah. So if you could just raise your hand and then I would stop for you.
Yeah. Just to like backtrack a little bit back to like before you immigrated. You're talking about how your high school really prepared you. Did you guys learn English? Was it like a private school? Could you talk more about like what type of high school you went to?
Right. So it's what we call a semi-private school.
Mm-hmm.
It was run by the Irish Jesuit priests, but we also get subsidies from the government. So we do have to pay tuition. So it's kind of half and half. It is a school that we do use English in most of the subjects, including science, mathematics, and English language and literature. But we still quite emphasize the Chinese literature and Chinese history. So there are two subjects like Chinese literature, Chinese language, Chinese literature, and Chinese history were taught in Chinese.
This is continuing on like your school. Were you religious at all during your upbringing? Were your parents religious?
No, my parents were not particularly religious or belong to any religious groups. We do get involved because it is a Catholic school and a lot of the Catholic activities. And towards my last few years in high school, I was baptized as a Catholic.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see. Was your school single sex or
yes, it's just all boys school.
Oh, I see. Interesting. And like to talk a little bit more about your parents, if you don't mind sharing what kind of occupations they had and how that might have influenced your career in any way.
Right. So my father has a college education in China. He actually owned a small business before we immigrated to Hong Kong. But of course, we have to start all over again. So he found a job as a stockbroker, also had a second job as a part-time teacher, in the evening. So he really worked quite hard over many years to support the family. So we are kind of still considered maybe a middle class family. My mother has a high school education, and she worked as a secretary in a bank through most of the years we are growing up. Yeah. So um, both of them, worked such ways.
I see. And you said you had an older brother and a younger brother, and I know you talked about how your older brother's decision to go to college in the United States had you follow in his footsteps a little bit. How is your relationship with both of your siblings? Um,
Oh,
both
yes.
when you were,
So,
oh, sorry.
yeah, when we were young, just typical three boys,
Yeah.
what can you say? So we have likes and dislikes and competitions and differences.
Mhm.
So we do get together pretty well. All three of us attended the same school, so we are recognized as the three brothers in the school. Um, we do have some, competition among ourselves, but I think we stuck together pretty well. And um, my older brother was very interested in technology and engineering, so he eventually became electrical engineer. Uh, but my time were spent more socially. I am a kind of people person, and like to really have social activities and get friends together and so on. So essentially, brothers, grew up pretty typically in a small family, and we pretty much supported each other quite well.
Is your family, like your brothers and your parents, are they some of them still in Hong Kong? Are they in the United States?
Well, my father passed away already. My mother is now uh, living in the States. My two brothers eventually all also went to, my younger brother also went to the University of Wisconsin, graduated there. So now my older brother's living in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and my younger brother's is in California, where my mother's staying with her right now.
Ah, I see. And one more question about your parents. Uh, raising three boys like that, did they have any special values or like beliefs that they tried to uh, instill upon all of you guys when you were being raised?
Right. So, they really never pressed us as to, we have to do this or we have to do that, this or that. But they showed us by really how hard they work, how, valued they perceive for, our education, how they perceive the family values that we say together. And so we learn a lot from them, really, in terms of self-reliance, self-determination, and working hard, and then try to achieve as much as we can. Uh, they really were hoping that, the three of us boys can have, a bigger achievement than they were. So actually, that's one of the driving force in wanting us to come to the United States and study this way.
Perfect. And then kind of transitioning to immigration. I know you briefly covered it, but to kind of expand on it, um, what were what were some challenges that you think you faced initially when you came across the sea?
Well, it is kind of a culture shock. I the first time I was in an American, the first couple of days where they would stay with someone and they uh, actually have a Western style uh, breakfast, and they especially because I'm Chinese, they boil some rice and put some butter on the rice, and thinking that that is the way that we eat the rice. So that's kind of an interesting anecdote to see that that we will say we don't eat rice this way. uh, Also, we, uh, I myself initially really don't like to eat pizza at all. I haven't tasted pizza. That's the first time I tasted pizza, and it just doesn't taste right. It's just a different type of taste than Chinese food. But then, after a while, everybody gets a pizza, and towards the evening or after their studies to just have a little snack and so on. Eventually, I get used to it, and now I like pizza very much. Uh, One of the things also is that, first when I got to the University of Wisconsin, I have to live in a dormitory. I have a roommate who's a, young person from a rural area in Wisconsin. So although we get together very well, but our interests are, quite different there. In Wisconsin, every uh, weekend, Friday night and Saturday night, and all the boys will go to the bar and get drunk, and then when they come back, they would make a racket and throwing up and so on. So I'm not that used to it, but eventually I understand that that's kind of the ways that some of the students behave in college. But interestingly, my roommate and I, my first roommate in the United States, and I got together pretty well. So those are my experiences. Then, I told you that I have to work part time while I was attending college too. My older brother, was already a supervisor in the kitchen, so he fit me in right away. So I started, working in the cafeteria for the dormitories, and starting from a what we call scraper. After people eat, I'm just supposed to scrape the leftover food into the garbage can, and then graduated to dishwasher, and then pots and pans washer, which I can earn an extra quarter an hour working, and that was kind of fun. We'll work for at least 2 or 3 hours after school every day, most of the days, to get some money to support ourselves. So those are the times that we really work pretty hard.
I see. Uh, did you face any sort of discrimination or like feel left out from like, your peers because they might be different from you or anything like that?
A little bit, I'm really, like I said earlier, that, I don't go out to drink with them. And there are a couple kids that actually that was in, 1967, 68. They'll use marijuana, in the room and so on. But, I kind of stay away from them, kind of pretty much study in the library, and just got back to the dorm, either to the cafeteria to work or go back to sleep. So besides my roommate and a few of the dormitory people, I really don't have that much time to be involved in too much activities or feel that I'm I know I'm different, but I don't feel that anybody is specifically look at me as that much different.
Yeah. Kind of shifting to like the education part of, your immigration experience. What made you want to choose to study biochemistry?
Well, yes, like I said, it was a hot, subject at that time. Uh, I was not that particularly thinking towards engineering, which a lot of, the people, my classmates or whatever, were thinking about. So more in the more biological sciences field, and I think that biochemistry is a upcoming hot field at that time in the 60s. So I'm also thinking, something about the medical profession too, although at that time I don't have the financial resources to attend medical school at that time. So I was thinking about, picking biological science field and then maybe go to graduate school, which I would, get support for that and then see what happens.
Just for bookkeeping purposes, what years did you attend University of Wisconsin?
It's 1969 to 1960, end of 1969. I actually just studied 2.5 years. I finished all my courses sufficient to graduate in 2.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Uh, I got some credit allowances for my college level studies in Hong Kong. So that's why I was able to graduate a little earlier.
I see. Do you mind sharing some of your favorite and least favorite subjects while you were studying in college?
Oh, in college we have to study a foreign language, so um, they won't accept Chinese. So I have to study another language, German, which I find that was a little difficult for me to do. In terms of other subjects, pretty much I don't have too much difficulty. Of course, biochemistry is new. We have typical topics when I'm going through high school, but not in terms of biochemistry. So it is both new and not as easy, but it's very interesting, and it relates to the biological system. So it has meaning to it, as opposed to just chemistry that you just study formulas and chemicals and so on. But in biochemistry, you could actually relate it to how it works in the uh, human or animal systems.
See. And this is what you went to graduate school for?
That's right. So um, then I applied for graduate school because at that time graduate school will give me a stipend and I can self-support myself, and then I could, do research and so on. So fortunately, I was accepted to the University of Washington in Seattle for biochemistry graduate school. So then I moved from Madison, Wisconsin to Seattle, Washington as a graduate student. So, I kind of, this is the first step that I move up in terms of my studies then.
What sort of niche areas in biochemistry did you study?
So my thesis topic is the study of the function and subunit structures of an enzyme called DNA-dependent RNA polymerase. At that time, people are just starting to understand DNA and RNA and so on. So this is an important enzyme that copies the DNA and make the RNA so that the RNA can synthesize the protein that is active in the systems, biological systems. So we went through, essentially we decide, and I am the workhorse, of course. So my thesis advisor will assign me the topic of isolating the enzyme. At that time, we still don't know that much of how this enzyme works. It turns out that it has several subunits, and together it makes a functional protein that when you put the necessary ingredient in the test tube, then it will copy the DNA into an RNA. So that is, mainly my topic there. Mhm.
I see. It's pretty in-depth, very complicated.
Uh, yes, it's very interesting. At that time, we really don't know that much about genes and the molecular process. So this is kind of the beginnings of molecular biology.
Yeah, I can. How did you like Seattle?
Very good. My graduate student years is a lot of fun. Were a lot of fun, um, and I really spend as much time, studying and doing research as socializing and working. We really went through quite a bit. So, you know, University of Washington at that time had quite a large number of international students, and we uh, had about 400 or so um, students of ethnic Chinese students from Hong Kong and China and Taiwan and other places. So we had a lot of fun, socializing. So I was the president of the Chinese Student Association over there for 2 years. And I was also actually the president of the International Student Association. We have about 3,000 or so international students at that time in the University of Washington. So I was also on the board of directors for the Student Council, actually, for the University of Washington, mainly because the president of the International Student Association. So we got to meet a lot of people and learn from each other. So besides studying and research, had a lot more fun.
I see. I
And
see.
also one important event, happened during my graduate student years in the University of Washington is, uh, actually, it, I don't know whether you have heard of it before. It's called the Del Yu Tai movement. Uh, and this is the period around 1970 to 1976 or so. There is a group of small islands in the South China Sea that's in dispute between Japan and China regarding the ownership of the islands. So the Chinese students are quite aware of this dispute, and we actually organize quite a bit of informational lectures, conferences, some even protests to ask the Chinese government to really stand firm to be involved to claim the ownership of the islands. So this is actually the first time that a lot of students from Hong Kong and Taiwan start to learn more about China because we always kind of shunted away, try to learn what's going on in China because earlier there was the Cultural Revolution in China, and we heard a lot of not so good things happening in China. But But then, in the 70s, it seems that there is quite a change in the Chinese leadership and also the government and so on. So it's a start to let the Chinese students be aware of what's going on. And we are we were also very much encouraged when at that time President Nixon, Richard Nixon, visited China in 1972. That really let us know, have a glimpse of with the people in the United States and us especially. We are quite excited to see what's in China. We visited the Great Wall in Beijing and also different places. So we were very much into learning more about China. So this is a era that the students from Taiwan and Hong Kong usually we didn't know too much about China, starts learning more about China and our own fellow Chinese people living in China. So that was quite a kind of revelation to us to start learning more about the Chinese culture, Chinese language, Chinese system, and so on.
I see. And um, kind of retracking on to like, how did this influence you and your career path?
Um, well, I was always quite interested in getting a group of people together and try to, besides our work and our studies, and try to unite together and recognize our strength and recognize what uh, uh, affects our well-being and tries to really support and fight for our rights and so on. So I think you could see that afterwards I was also involved in a lot of different organizations, both professional organizations and social organizations and so on, that I felt that, you know, we try to get the people together and for people who have similar interests and similar backgrounds and so on to kind of think about interest together.
I see. Kind of moving on from like Seattle and like your graduate school. What did you do after you finish your thesis and earn your PhD?
Right. So I got my PhD. At that time, um, I had a previous senior graduate student who's already uh, studying in the lab in Houston, uh, what, and they are doing molecular biology work. So I applied for a research fellowship in the Baylor College of Medicine Department of Cell Biology in Houston, and I was accepted by at that time Dr. Bert O'Malley, who was chairman of the Department of Cell Biology. So then I came over. At that time, I got married just right before I left Seattle. So my wife and I then moved to Houston as first of all as a research fellow, and then kind of move on. And I was really very fortunate to be in a laboratory in a group that were really doing top-notch research. Uh, I was fortunate to be a participant in that. Uh, so that we were, one of the first groups to clone a gene, a complementary DNA gene of the ovalbumin gene, the egg white protein from a chicken, and that is really besides the human globin gene that was also cloned around the same time. This is the first genes that were actually cloned so that we know the structure of the mRNA. And then very quickly following that, so at that time, it seems far-fetched, but at that time, we don't even know how genes look like. So we know that DNA will produce RNA, but we were successful in copying the RNA to make it into a complementary cDNA so that we can clone that in a plasmid of a bacteria. So we can now produce the protein that is actually in the egg white. So that is very interesting. Then after that, then we use the cDNA as a probe to go back and try to clone the natural gene of the ovalbumin gene to see what's actually the actual natural gene looks like. At that time, we were still thinking about the natural gene is pretty much like the DNA. One copy will produce an mRNA, but little do we know, in 1978, we actually discovered that the natural gene actually is a much bigger stretch of DNA than just the cDNA. And it is divided into many segments, and there are some parts of the gene that's active, some parts of the gene that's not active, and eventually the gene product will be a big mRNA, will be a big RNA. It will be processed into a smaller piece of functional mRNA, and then that is the RNA that will produce protein. So we now know that there are introns and exons in the natural gene, which is also one of the first published at that time. So we were quite excited about these new findings later on, leading to everything else that's coming about in terms of genetic analysis and so on. So those were the times that are good times. A lot of research, a lot of late nights, weekends, just working right through, because we do have a group in France. They were, I said, doing the hemoglobin gene, that we compete in terms of publishing the actually the understanding and the structure of a natural gene, to be the first to do that. So those are the first a few years when I was a research fellow, and then I was promoted to assistant professor in cell biology. I also was successful in getting an NIH grant, R01 grant, to study actually at that time the gene structure of several other genes. So then I have a career change after that. So let me ask you questions before I go to my next chapter.
No, that was pretty good. It seems like you had a very holistic, long, winding road to, your research. I actually had a question about why you switched from like molecular cell biochemistry to something more neuroscience-y, but I feel like it might tie in with your other career. So if you want to talk about that first, that's okay too.
Okay. Well, so now I was assistant professor of cell biology, but with support and encouragement from my wife, and my two daughters were at that time 5 and 3 years old already. I decided to go back to medical school. So it was a not that a difficult decision for me. I did research and so on. I like it, but it is very much a delayed gratification. You work and work and do research, and then hopefully you will find some important discoveries. We was lucky that we actually did very well, published in Cell and Nature and for our more meaningful discoveries. But at the same time, uh, I'm kind of a people person too. I feel that something is lacking that in just the laboratory, hopefully we could, uh, apply whatever. At that time, the molecular biology and genetic field is really upcoming very quickly. Hopefully to apply that to medical science and so on. So then I decided at a later age, I was in my 30s already, to go back to medical school. I was accepted to Baylor College of Medicine, and uh, luckily at that time the in-state tuition was only $400, okay, very affordable for me. So we went through the medical education. Mhm. So we pretty much spent the same amount of time like a newly graduated college graduate, and went through 4 years of medical school at um, Baylor. And then I have to decide on what specialty I want to specialize in. I picked a neurology because I felt that with the advancement of molecular biology and genetics, a lot of neurological diseases that we at that time did not know what the cause were, and did not know what were some of the effective treatments were. So this will be a good field for me. I think that I could use my molecular biology and genetics experience to develop some, both the some scientific contribution and also medical contribution in the field of neurology. So I picked neurology, and I went through residency in at Baylor College of Medicine. We attended the Bentop Hospital, the VA Hospital, and the Methodist Hospital, and so on. And got into the neurological field.
I happen to see Cornell somewhere on your resume. I'm not sure.
That's later on, and I could get into that. Uh, so, uh, so I 1990 is a significant year for me. So after 8 years, 4 years of medical school, 4 years of residency, I finally got back to assistant professor again in the Department of Neurology at Baylor College of Medicine. And so I have to kind of pick a field in neurology. There are many subspecialties in neurology. So I kind of picked a field which I think has a lot of potential for development. Yeah, there's the neurodegenerative diseases. such as Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, and other neurodegenerative diseases and so on. So we, at that time, I kind of pretty much concentrate on that. I was still doing some basic science research for a couple more years, but then eventually I have to decide on whether or not I have enough time and energy to do both basic science and clinical work. So I did have to close my lab and then concentrate on doing clinical research actually in neurology, and then not do basic research anymore at that time. So 1990 is also the year that I got my citizenship here in the United States. So, and I also graduated from residency. So I started, my career as an faculty in neurology.
I see. I know that earning an MD and a PhD is definitely not an easy thing to do. Are you willing to share some of the hardships and sacrifices that you had to make during your journey?
So my PhD study, like I said, were quite enjoyable, and we actually at that time I was I had time to do both research and also have a good social life. Now, during my medical years, because I already have a family with young children, that was a little more difficult. I have to kind of concentrate on my studies. I haven't actually had to study for a while because in graduate school and my fellowship, we just mainly do studies and experiments. It's different type of study. So we just have to, really buckle down and do the studying. I did sacrifice some of the times with my family, but looking back, it is quite worth it. 8 years went by, and I'm really fortunate that I had a good medical education and good, really practical experience and being a resident in the Baylor system. And now that with those type of with those experiences, that I am able to be what I am right now.
I see. Hold on, sorry, I'm checking. Yes, I think I might have interrupted you, but it seems that you have affiliations with Cornell Well College of Medicine. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Okay, so that is a long story. Do you mind if I don't talk about it at this time until later?
Yeah. That's totally okay.
Yeah, it is only a side issue. Yeah.
Okay, I can ask another question then. Sort of just wrapping up everything you just talked about, what ultimately led you to pursue a career in both medicine and research, particularly in the field of neurology? And were there any particular influences, such as people or events, that kind of helped you, like encourage you to go down this path?
Well, it's more, what I decide based on my research experience when I was a graduate student and a fellow and so on. I decided that just pure basic science probably did not fit my personality as well. I hope to utilize my research experience in a more practical way. So we getting a medical degree also will allow me to be more closer to patients. Uh, like I said, I'm a people person, so it makes me happier if I can actually uh, take care of patients, get them better, and um, this again we call more immediate gratification as opposed to being in basic science where we have delayed gratification that we do research and working on test tubes and low chemical reactions until there is a successful discovery. Whereas as a physician, I can see people, touch people, and get them well quickly and get their appreciation very quickly. Uh, a little bit of a selfish idea is that I like to do both, unfortunately. So I just have to spend the time and get, both research experience and medical experience so that I can do both. So it's a more of a selfish and self-driving goal for myself, actually, to do that.
I see. And do you mind sharing what are some of the best parts of your job and as well as some of the worst parts and any other special moments that you feel like you want to bring up?
Yeah, so we haven't actually gone to what happens, after I started neurology yet. It is also longer, I graduated in 1990, so it's 30 years since 30 some years since then. So I will get to that in a little bit. But, you know, uh, thinking back, and, you know, uh, fortunately, it fits my personality. We just have to work harder than a lot of other people. Uh, I do, at this time, 13, 14 hours every day, 6 days a week almost, or sometimes 7 days a week. I have to kind of juggle my time between seeing patients, running reports, doing some clinical studies, teaching, uh, and paperwork, and so on. So that's a lot of things going on, organize conferences, review papers, and communicate with other colleagues, try to do some clinical research to benefit our patients. So those are things all things I want to do. Uh, Unfortunately, there's not enough time in a 24-hour day. I try my best. So working hard is important. Working smart and more efficiently, which I learned, as time goes on, are very important. So that's what I think. I definitely, my wife can tell you that I sacrifice some time, being with her more, with my family more, but we try to make our time together quality time, and also I'm glad that with my family's support, I'm have been successful in my career.
I see. And Dr. Chow told me that you're an amazing physician with incredible work ethic and compassion. Could you talk about what qualities you bring to your career as a neurologist and also some of the accolades or awards that you have collected over time?
Yes, uh, so in neurology, like I said, I more specialized in neurodegenerative diseases, and these are more older patients. So I really enjoy taking care of older patients who unfortunately develop diseases that have no cure or effective treatment at this time. So a lot of that is making them understand what the condition is and what we are doing. It actually, motivates me to work a little harder and doing some research in terms of finding ways to help them. You really learn to listen to our patients, be compassionate, be able to understand their uh, uh, concerns, their fears, and their worries, so that you could effectively help them that way. Uh, it just kind of comes from experience. I think now that I'm getting older, I can relate to my older patients a little bit better. I can thinking back, 25 years ago, I probably would not be as uh, uh, good a doctor as I am right now, but it comes from experience, listening to the patients, try to do our best for them, uh, think about their situation, and try to make it better. So, uh, we're saying, just quick summary of my 30 years in neurology is that uh, so I was a faculty at Baylor College of Medicine. I was gradually moving up from assistant professor to associate professor to full professor because of my um, interest and success in clinical research and teaching and also patient care. Um, Also in 2001, that I became the director of the Parkinson's Clinical Research and Center in the VA hospital. So I now this time I'm more concentrating in Parkinson's disease. So over the years, I did clinical studies on Alzheimer's disease. Actually, one of the first drugs that FDA approved for treatment for Alzheimer's disease is called donepezil. And, I was fortunate to participate in the clinical studies of this drug and see its data and success published, and then the drug became commercially available. This drug, although it is not a cure or very effective treatment, it was something to slow down the progression some. So that was quite a success that I was happy about. And then I was involved in quite a few different research studies. There was one drug that we studied quite extensively for patients with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. But unfortunately, the results were not as good and did not get the FDA approval. In regarding to research in Parkinson's disease, I think my contribution would be that in Parkinson's disease, it is a chronic, long, drawn-out disease. Patients can live through 20, 30 years with the condition and gradually getting worse. So there will be a time that the patients would not be very much responsive to the available medication anymore. So we, together with neurosurgery, develop ways to modify the brain in hope of improving their symptoms in Parkinson's disease. So we did some research to put a lesion actually in the brain in a particular area called the globus pallidus to eliminate some of the stiffness, slowness, gait difficulties, swallowing difficulties, and so on for patients with Parkinson's disease. And then more recently, I was involved in a multi-center study for deep brain stimulation in patients with Parkinson's disease. We're actually putting electrodes in patients with Parkinson's disease to stimulate their brain in the event to make to improve their symptoms and so on. And that has been very successful. We now know a lot about putting electrodes in the brain to activate certain parts of the brain to eliminate their symptoms and so on. So that is quite a success. And now, it is FDA approved, and people who are in the later stages, more advanced stages of Parkinson's disease, have a choice that they can really push back their disease about 6 to 8 years, so that they would have some better quality of life. So those are kind of important. Regarding some of the other successes, I was, really happy that got recognized as, pretty competent doctor, neurologist doctor here, both in the city and also in the country, and so on. I also I was the director of the Parkinson's Center, actually, in the VA Medical Center here in Houston. So getting back to, you were talking about Weill Cornell Association. So back about 15 years ago, I was faculty at Baylor College of Medicine. And at that time, there was a split between the Houston Methodist Hospital, who for a long time who was the private teaching hospital for Baylor College of Medicine. But eventually there was a split, so people, part of the neurology department in Baylor College of Medicine actually moved over to Houston Methodist Hospital and established a department over here. I actually joined later on to be a faculty at this department at Houston Methodist Hospital. And I was honored with a chairmanship, and also, recognized as the Hervey Chair, endowed chair recipient for Parkinson's disease research and treatment. So Houston Methodist does not have a medical school and does not have a specific academic affiliation. So Houston Methodist actually is affiliated with Weill Cornell University in New York. So my academic credential is actually from Weill Cornell instead of Baylor College of Medicine. So I'm now professor of neurology and neuroscience, actually from Weill Cornell University.
I see. That makes sense now.
Yeah, so those are some of the things that we do. I'm still quite active in professional groups and social groups. I was president of the Houston Neurological Society. I was vice president for the Texas Neurological Society, which is really a big society. that there are about 800 to 900 neurologists actually in Texas, and we have a pretty good group. I was the president and also a board member for the foundation of the Chinese American Doctors Association here in Houston. Um, I was also belonging to the Society of Chinese Bioscientists in America, which is a national organization involving bioscientists here in the whole state or the whole country. So I'm still kind of involved in that, some of these groups and so on. Besides that, I like teaching. We have medical school students and from Texas A&M, and we have residents here, actually from Houston Methodist, that follows me in my clinic and also in my hospital duties, seeing patients in the hospital at this time. Um, I still do a little research, although probably not as active as I was before, but still try to do some research, mostly clinical research. And I also collaborate with scientists, basic scientists in Houston Methodist to do some basic research too. I can, offer a little bit, although I cannot actually do it myself. I can offer some of my experience in terms of basic research and how we can think about translational research to hopefully get the basic research results to actually benefit patients with the real diseases. So I see patients every day still. So that's still keeps me busy.
Yeah. Kind of talking more about your patients. I know that you said it yourself, the neurodegenerative diseases, there's no simple cure or treatment. And it can be pretty hard mentally and emotionally to see like your patients decline and go through these hardships. How do you think that Houston, like the medical center here, is able to support these patients and provide care for like, you know, uh, diseases and conditions where there is no definite cure or anything like that?
Right. So one of the things we would like to do is take care of their immediate problems, take care of the symptoms like Parkinson's disease patients, and they have the slowness, the stiffness, the gait imbalance, and so on. There are medications we can give them to improve their quality of life. Uh, it, there are many actually medications that's available. So it does take experience and try to uh, mix and match the medications to best benefit your patients. Then in addition to that, one thing that I want to mention is that these patients, neurodegenerative disease patients, are very individualized. And each patient is slightly different. They have different clinical features. They have different worries and concerns. They have different family situations. They have different individual needs and so on. So you really have to take care of your patient as an individual instead of just like a group of patients, because that doesn't work very well. They need a lot of support, both the patient and the caregivers, because caregivers bear quite a bit of burden in taking care of the patients too. So making them understand, giving them some hope as much as possible, telling them about the research we're doing, talking about some of the new areas that can help them, new drugs coming out, but approach it in a more optimistic way, that helps. And if you see a patient and say, sorry, there's nothing I can do for you, there's no cure, that's not going to be very well received by the patient and the caregiver. So we try to do our best to uh, put on, and make them really feel better and optimistic outlook. There are a lot of different little ways we could do, both by medication, by uh, just non-pharmacological means, keeping them healthy and active, doing a little exercise, making them sleep better, and making things to manage their emotions better, and those are all very important things to do. So it's not that as easy as seeing a patient and then just give them one medication and then expect them to do well. So it is actually taking care of the complete patient and together with the caregiver is the challenge for us.
I see. Yeah. Um, I guess since we're running a little lower on time, I can switch to some other topics instead of just your career. Do you
Sure.
want to talk a little bit about your family? I know you mentioned you have a very supportive wife. Maybe you can talk about where and when you met her and your children as well.
Okay. Well, uh, we met when I was in graduate school in Seattle. She was an undergraduate student at that time. So we got married in 1976. So she was, she is still is a civil engineer. She has her own company and projects in building residential homes. So I have two daughters. Both of them are grown up now. They grew up in Houston. My older daughter is a material engineer, and my younger daughter was an attorney, and now she changed her career as an ice cream maker and vendor. She actually runs several ice cream stores in Washington, D.C., and called the Ice Cream Jubilee, and it's considered one of the uh, best ice cream stores in the country, actually. She made her own ice cream. So, no, both of them are not doctors, which, again, I never really uh, press them on anything. I just want them to develop their interests. So uh, now I have 5 grandchildren, and so my older daughter had 3 boys, and my younger daughter has a boy and a girl. So actually, just last July 4th, we took the weekend. We got everybody together and have a family reunion after quite a long time. So that was very good, very pleasant.
I see. And I know that being a clinician scientist can eat up a lot of your time, but outside of your work, do you have any hobbies or activities that you like to do in your downtime?
Um, I really don't have that much time as hobbies. When I have time, I just want to relax, maybe do a little reading. I enjoy food. We're gonna go out and have a nice dinner. Unfortunately, over the last year or so, we did not do that too often. But we like to do that when I have time. I'm a pretty good cook, so I like to cook a little bit myself and develop some good recipes for um, food that I like. Uh, those are some of the things. We like to travel, so whenever we get an opportunity, earlier, whenever we have conferences, in different places in the United States or in the world we would like to go. So we got to travel to quite a lot of different places, make use of the time to attend a conference, and also at the same time visit some of the nice places there too.
Mm. And this is kind of a heavier question, but how do you identify yourself today? And this can be based on your experience, your ethnicity, your religious affiliation, your values, beliefs, and so on.
Well, I think I'm hopefully a pretty good person, pretty good doctor. Mhm. I have been able to really use my uh, education and ability to help uh, some of my patients to make them feel better, get better quality of life, and a large number of them, actually get well from their ailments. So I also um, hopefully can be regarded as a good teacher that I have over the years and that uh, taught many residents and students that hopefully to share my experience and my knowledge with them, um, and they can learn a little bit from that. And then I'm, also, like I said, besides clinical care and teaching, I'm still very much enthusiastic about research. Hopefully, the research work that I've done, I've come up with some medications and procedures like the deep brain stimulation to benefit people uh, and hopefully to lessen their sufferings from the diseases. So I think that I have made some contributions, and by working hard, by doing the best I can to do that, and I'm very glad and very happy about what I have achieved at this time.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of talking about your contributions, I know you were really involved with like activism back in grad school. Um, lately, uh, Asian American hate has been one of the big political scenes. How do you feel about the rising awareness of Asian hate in today's world?
Right. So definitely, I think Asian Americans really should have a strong voice and bigger appearance in the really in all aspects of the U.S. society. In terms of we are considered, uh, we were considered then, and we are still considered now as the model. Minority people have a kind of a uh, frame of recognition for us. When you talk about Asians, okay, you are a good scientist, you're a good doctor, maybe, but you're good, quiet, you work hard, and you do whatever you do. But in terms of political scene or activism, that leave it to other people to do. So I think and hopefully the younger, you know, people too, uh, people like my daughters, and I'm glad to say that they are pretty active in terms of um, fighting for the rights of Asian Americans. But I, would definitely encourage now what we call second or third generation um, Asian Americans to be really develop into a strong voice and that will break out, own constraints and be real leaders in our society, in our political system, and hopefully we could see that it's recognized as a, not just a very unilateral, contribution or dimension in terms of our abilities. We should really be active in many areas in the U.S. society.
Okay. Yeah, and then lastly, I have a couple questions about COVID-19. This pandemic has definitely changed a lot of things, and you as a doctor have probably experienced some pretty big changes. How has the pandemic impacted the way you interact with your patients and just the healthcare field in general?
Right. So from the neurology standpoint, we went through a period that we did shut down in the early part of last year, and then got a chance to see a lot of patients. We switched a lot of visits to telemedicine and virtual care, uh, which works to some extent. Unfortunately, in neurology, we have to really examine our patients and bring out through the neurological examination, what are their subtle abnormalities there. So in a way that affected some of ability to really be in a better contact with our patients. But now, hopefully, we are getting better. Also, we understand how to use telemedicine better so that we could now see our patients both in person or virtually through telemedicine. So that opened up an avenue that some of our patients live far away and they are elderly, that is difficult for them to come to the medical center. So some of these people just would not come to the medical center at all to seek a higher level of care. So hopefully through telemedicine, we could see more of these elderly and rural patients in terms of their some of the more difficult to diagnose, difficult to treat neurological diseases. Um, uh, you know, we always worry that COVID-19 is not going to go away if we are not, really understand what it could do and, what the vaccine can help the population in defeating COVID-19. So there's still, a lot of education. I think the understanding is that if the patient is resistant to the vaccine, if the doctor actually able to explain to them one-on-one, person-to-person, they will understand and they will accept, uh, explanation better. And I actually have this experience, one of my patients, when I asked them if they got vaccinated, he said no. But I said, then why do you come all the way? Actually, this person came all the way from New Mexico to see me. That's because he said, I trusted you because I trust that you can help me. So I said, if you trust me, then, I'm going to tell you to get your vaccination. You would help yourself and you would help, your family and other people too. And do you trust me with that? Then he thought a little bit and said yes. And then he decided to go for the vaccine that as soon as possible. So, through personal communication, I think doctors can do a little bit more too.
Yeah, that last part actually got me thinking about another question. I know that there's still plenty of doctors out there who refuse to get vaccinated. How do you feel about that?
Not that many doctors, I think they probably not that I heard of, see, in Houston Methodist system, there are about 5,000 doctors there. I think none of them refused to get the vaccine. I think, we used to get the uh, flu vaccine every year. Everybody, is supposed to get the flu vaccine. And now with this vaccine and looking at the scientific data, that I don't think that the doctors there. But other healthcare professionals may have more hesitancy in doing that. So again, it is just hopefully through uh, personal, contacts and explanation. Um, it is still, out of just take Methodist, Houston Methodist, for example, we have more than 26,000 employees here, and only 150 of them decided not to get the vaccine. Very, very small percentage of the people who, one way or another decided not to get the vaccine. So yes, in the health profession, there's still some people that are resistant, but it's a very small minority. However, I cannot say that through other the general population as such, and we still have to do a better job in convincing other people to do it. So I think the medical profession has the ability and even have the duty to try to convince as many people as possible, even one at a time, so we could hopefully have them be able to keep healthy themselves and also keep other people healthy.
Okay, yeah. Those are honestly all of my questions for this interview. If there's anything else you'd like to share or talk about, you can let me know.
Thank you very much. This is a very good experience. I hope that I have able to tell you a little bit of my life and history. What keeps me going at this time still. Um, so yes, we could talk a little bit more if you have other separate questions for me later on. Okay.
Yeah, I can stop the recording